I'm sure that he's just said it, yeah. 90. Pick a number. There's really, that was too close. 50's too close.
Ready? Yes. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Welcome to our general fund budget workshop for fiscal year 2015. Today we'll be reviewing the general fund. This is a workshop. We're presenting a preliminary budget and incorporating council's feedback and direction and presenting a revised general fund budget at a follow-up workshop. Our goal is to present the final city manager's recommended budget at the June 3rd council meeting. Our goal tonight with regards to the general fund is to present revenues, expenditures, fund balance, as well as the reserves and designations within fund balance, capital outlay, personnel request, and then some of the challenges that the city faces in the preparation of this budget, of next year's budget, as well as future budgets. We'll start with revenue projections. With regards to revenue projections for next year, just a minute. With regards to revenue projections for next year, we are estimating projecting $29 million in revenues. That's the number right here. That is $29 million. Out of the $29 million, we have approximately 24.5 that is ongoing revenues, with the rest of them being one-time revenues for the Crookshank project. Individually, on this spreadsheet, you're going to see, individually on this spreadsheet, you're going to see we start with the major revenue sources, the first one being the sales tax and triple flip. We are projecting $11 million in that category, which is a $300,000 increase from the budget, current year budget. That is normal. It's about 2.80% increase. The average has been about 2%, so $300,000 an increase from the current year revenues with regards to sales tax. The next category is motor vehicle license fee. We are projecting $3.6 million, pretty much at the same level as this fiscal year, only a $15,000 increase from the current year. Property taxes, our next major revenue source, are projecting $2.9 million, which is only a $40,000 increase, 1.40% over this year's revenues. With regards to the TOT, we're projecting $1.6 million. That's the transient occupancy tax. This is a category of revenues that has been increasing, and therefore we're projecting $140,000 over the current year budget. With regards to other taxes, we're projecting $711,000 in other taxes. That's business licenses and franchise tax, pretty much at the same level as this year. For building fees, this used to be one of our major revenue sources in the past. For example, back in '07, our revenues were $1.4 million. Our recession hit, and so now we're down to $395,000, pretty much same level as this year and then the past year as well. Service charges, we're getting down to the small numbers, $387,000, pretty much same level. For grants and agency, $1.1 million, a decline of $102,000. Basically, some of the grants have expired. We completed the projects. They're a one-time grant, so they don't appear in next year revenue projections. Then we're off to the next category, $7.2 million. That's fines, licenses and permits, other revenue, and transfers in. This category shows an increase. This category, first of all, includes the transfer in for the Crookshank project, the $4 million. That's why normally this amount is $3 million. That shows an increase of $551,000. Some of the categories were pass-throughs are increasing. we have some transfers in, we're closing some miscellaneous small grants, not grants, funds, and we're transferring the funds into the general fund to support some of the operations. Overall,
Okay, let me stop you there and ask, council have any questions with regard to the revenue side of the budget?
I have one question. Letitia, could you explain, you said that on the fines, permits, fees, that would normally be 3 million, but we have a pass-through because of the Crookshank, is that what that is?
what happens is, yes, normally it would be 3 million. Currently, it holds also $4 million for the Crookshank project. Those were monies that we are transferring in. We had set them aside for other projects. However, this project, Crookshank, has a priority, so they were transferred for it, to cover the expenses.
And what did we do in 14 to produce that number of 6.6 million?
It's the same thing. What happened is that if we also allocated budgeted for the Crookshank project this fiscal year. However, we
didn't use it,
we
so
didn't
we're
use
carrying
it,
it
so
over.
we're going to carry
Okay.
it over to next year.
All right, thank you.
Leticia, on your projections on increases or decreases of revenue,
Yes.
no, they vary from very small increases like the motor vehicle tax, 4.41% to, 9 on TOT. What's the rationale for coming up with a forecasted increase or decrease of revenue?
If each one is individually, and each one has to be analyzed separately. Sales tax, it depends on how much consumerism in the city. For example, TOT tax, you heard the presentation by IVEDC where our hotels are impacted at this point in time. So therefore, our TOT, transient occupancy tax, is increasing, and therefore the 9% increase. That's one that has been increasing, as opposed to, for example, property taxes are pretty much static at the same level. Property taxes are not increasing due to the economy. Sales tax are increasing somewhat. Sales are picking up, not as much as before, not at the levels that we had prior to the recession. So each one of those line items has to be analyzed separately.
Did we get already some numbers for our last quarter of the fiscal year?
We received and analyzed the numbers for the third quarter of 2013. We're waiting for the fourth quarter, the Christmas season of
Right.
2014. And I believe at the beginning of the presentation, or maybe where I said, no, that's later on. Some of these numbers are going to be updated as we get the new information for our sales tax results for the fourth quarter, our major sales.
When do those
season.
numbers normally come in?
This is April, next month.
Next month?
Next,
Okay.
before we actually finish the budget process.
I'm just curious, because on the last quarter sales tax, and curious if there was an impact with the competition that we have now in Calexico for Mexicali shoppers, and whether that resulted in an impact on our sales tax revenue.
And also, for the mayor, council remind you, we also contract with HDL, a company that not only tracks our sales tax, but they also do other work for us. And they've also participated in giving their estimates based upon state, county, other factors they've been looking at. We've been utilizing them for over a decade, and it's really assisted us in this process. But we are looking forward to that report to see what the impact was from the Grand Plaza.
Okay.
Well, when did the Grand Plaza open exactly?
It was October.
October? So they were there for the holiday season, as
Yes.
Mr. Silva has it. They were open for the holiday season.
Yes. It'll be interesting.
Just one quick question. In terms of asset forfeiture, where does that fall under?
Asset forfeiture is in a separate fund. It's
That's a
not within
special
the general
revenue.
fund. It's a special revenue fund.
And you'll
Yes.
see those at the next council meeting.
Okay.
You'll see the detail of the enterprise funds and the special revenue funds at the next workshop.
Okay.
However, I'll go over some of the asset forfeiture because it does support general fund activity. So later on in the presentation, we'll touch up on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Sanders, any questions at this
No,
point? Okay. Ms. Salcido, if you continue, please.
The next category is operating expenditures. For operating expenditures, basically, we have a balanced budget, and therefore, our goal in a balanced budget is to have the same level of expenditures as we have of revenue, and that's what we are presenting to you. Individually, we have the expenditures for each division. And for the first one, it's a combination of divisions that we call them the general government, and that includes city managers, city attorney, city clerk, IT, finance, HR, facility maintenance, non-departmental, etc. This category, we're estimating expenditures at $3.1 million. That's an increase. That shows a substantial increase of $699,000. However, one of the reasons being is that liability insurance is one of our non-discretionary expenses that is increasing. For example, we received the invoice for the insurance, and the payment for next year is $1.2 million. The payment for this year was only $690,000. So it's a major increase. And some of the reasons for that is it's a rolling retro where they go back and analyze our losses in the past and so on. So whereas we had this year an adjustment down of $350,000, next year it's an adjustment up of $150,000. So on combined, it's going up by about $600,000.
Ms. Salcido, isn't that cost increase allocated among all of the divisions?
Yes, it is allocated it is part of the general government, and it is allocated to water, the enterprise funds, as enterprise funds, water, wastewater. But however, it also goes to some of the other general fund activities, such as police, fire.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think you just stated that the year-over-year increase is about how much?
The annual
70.
increase? What do you-
Yeah.
We paid $690,000 this year. We're paying $1.2 million next year.
Okay, so of that increase, does that get allocated among police, fire, public works, engineering,
Everybody, yes.
everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just absorbed?
It's just paid out of this category,
Okay.
the non-departmental, basically. Okay. Let me see. So next is police. For police, we are estimating $8.9 million, only a $91,000 increase over last year expenditures, pretty much same level. For fire, we're projecting $6.6 million. That shows a $506,000 increase, mainly due to a higher allocation for capital. Next year, we're budgeting the last payment on the fire engine, which is $380,000, I believe, bringing up that number, the increase for next year's budget for fire. For public works, administration and streets, pretty much at the same level, less than a 1% increase, $5.2 million. Engineering, $377,000, same level. Building, we have an allocation of $502,000. That shows a decline of $62,000. However, that's due to some salary savings, as we have a vacant position, might not be filled, or by the time we get it filled, it'll be half years, and therefore the salary savings. We have planning at $423,000, less than a 1% change. For park maintenance, we budgeted we have allocated $1.1 million. That's a decline of $136,000. And basically here, its capital is less for next year, as some of the capital projects have been completed this year. So it doesn't recur again next year. Recreation, $1.1 million, an increase of 11, almost 12%. And what this line item includes is an increased a new allocation for the sports complex. The project will be completed at the end of this year, and therefore for next year we're allocating some funds for the operations of that center. It also includes some increases in their contracts and temporary services. For the library, $665,000, a 3% increase. Economic development, $316,000, And then blight elimination, 60,000 allocation. Those show a decline of 14% and 7%. And basically what that is that's taking into consideration some of the salaries that are being allocated to other grants and projects, therefore relieving the general fund from that expenditure. For transfers out, this is a transfer out for other post-employment benefits, OPEB, and we are allocating 313,000 towards that endeavor, a decline of 286,000, almost half. What that is that is due to an implied cash subsidy that is paid directly by the city, allowing us to reduce the amount of the annual required contribution for that liability. So basically, the city throughout the year pays some of those expenses, and we are allowed to deduct that from the annual contribution. We also, with regards to OPEB, we can afford to do that because we're at 85% funded for that liability as of the last statement that I received on March 31st.
That's phenomenal. Okay, let me stop you there and ask council any questions with regard to the two expenditure slides. Okay, you continue, please.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I do have a question. I'd like Ms. Alcida to back up. For the blight elimination and economic development, you said that was done through grants? Or was that parks? What kind of grant?
For economic development and blight elimination, these are the allocations we allocate for supplies and services and salaries and so on. However, throughout the years, I believe it's HUD entitlement absorbs some of the costs for blight elimination. Okay. And then some of the salaries, if they are working on other grants, CDBG grants, it gets allocated to those grants,
okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
If we were to look at that, the presentation that was made a little earlier by Mrs. Pedra saying the 13% for administration costs would be somehow segued in, all right, yes. Thank you.
Okay. So therefore, as mentioned before, we have a balanced budget. That means that we have revenues of 29 million and we have expenditures totaling the same amount, 29 million. We are projecting that we'll start the year and end the year with $12 million in fund balance. However, this number may change, and we have talked about once I get the projections and the numbers for the last quarter of the fiscal year, then I might have to adjust this number accordingly. 12 million. With regards to our reserve for fund balance, we have designated allocations for each one of potential liabilities per the city's financial policy. Our city's financial policy says you shall designate an amount of your fund balance for potential liabilities, whether it be accrued leave, economic unknowns, replacement of facilities and infrastructure, vehicles and equipment, and so on. And we have done that. With regards to our fund balance, we have allocated, as our policy calls for, a 10% reserve for economic unknowns. That's 2.9 million. We have allocated out of the 12 million, 1.5 for accrued leave liability, pretty much the accrued liability that we have on the books. For vehicle and major equipment replacement, we have a designation of $3.7 million towards that endeavor. Now this is one that we need to continue to build up, as our accrued liability, accumulated depreciation on the equipment is 14 million. That means that we're almost at the end of the life of that equipment, and we need to build up to be able to absorb, to be able to replace the equipment as it ends, as its useful life ends. We also, this budget includes, as you know, we have been talking, and there is a need for two new buildings. That is a new building for the police department, a new building for the library, a permanent building for the library. And for that endeavor, we continue to build up this designation. We're setting aside $2.5 million for a building replacement, whether it be used for a police department, a building, or a library, that's to be determined, but we are building up that designation.
Letitia, question
Yes.
on that. What, is that an increase from last year?
I believe last year was 2 million.
So we're increasing it by a
Yes,
$500,000 this year?
yes. And of course, you know, if it's the council's desire, we can move some of out of vehicle major equipment into building replacement. I mean, you have the ability to do that. However, they're all important at this point in time.
Of course. Thank you.
For Crookshank, we also designated an amount out of fund balance because while the budget includes $4 million for that expenditure, we don't yet have a final number, and it is, initially it was estimated it was going to be 4.2 to 6.2 million. So just in case it goes over the 4 million that's already in the budget, we're designated in a contingency for Crookshank within reserves. And then finally, 355,000 just for revenue stabilization. Should our revenues not come in as projected, if we're short 300,000, we have an amount set aside within fund balance for that endeavor. And then we come to capital. With regards to capital, the total amount requested was $10.5 million. Due to limited resources, we had to evaluate the priority and the urgency within the city as a whole. So what we did, we sat down with the departments, we analyzed their fleet, their IT infrastructure, the priority for each one of those, to be able to determine how to fund, what to include in the budget. Capital requests were evaluated, as you can see there. We try to determine whether the capital request was to meet a safety need, was it a legal, to comply with a legal requirement, or to improve customer service. As a result of that, we are recommending with this budget $8.1 million, which I think is fantastic. The general fund includes almost $5 million. And and then we have from other sources $3.2 million. Those other sources are impact fees, asset forfeiture, the 07 RDA bonds, and HUD entitlement. And basically, what we can do is those sources may be used for general fund activities, so I'm including them here, even though we're only discussing the general fund. Individually, what we did, due to deferred maintenance, we determined there's a need to replace a lot of our infrastructure, a lot of our computers. For next year, we are doing some of that, and as you can see this, we have allocated funds for some of these departments, city manager, human resources, city attorney. We have allocated funds for replacement of computers. What we try to do, we go back, we look to see how old the computers are in each department and which one needs to be replaced next year or soon. We have also allocated for the IT network $110,000 for infrastructure and computer software for next year. For police, there's various allocations for both vehicles, IT infrastructure, and safety equipment. And we'll start with the first one. The first one, we have allocated $324,000 for 6 patrol vehicles. This is one that I went back, I reviewed individually. I wanted to know how many patrol units we have, how many miles for each vehicle, how old they are, and so on. We determined that the need at any given point is for 20 vehicles. We have 2 shifts, and we need 8 vehicles per shift plus 4 of emergency. So we need 20 vehicles at all times. Looking back, I saw that, or looking through the fleet, I saw that we have 10 vehicles that qualify as available and in good working order for patrol. However, 3 of those are questionable because they're 2009s and they have high miles. So we're trying to, again, restore our fleet to where we have 20 vehicles at any one time for patrol. So anyways, we're funding 6 of those. We're also, this budget includes an allocation also for 2 other police vehicles, but those are general service. Those are unmarked for training, for undercover work, so on, 65,000, that's this category. Now, we also saw the need to update the IT infrastructure for police, and that's per IT's priority and recommendation. So we're including an 87,000 allocation for 5 file servers, and also 19,500 for 13 computers. We're replacing a battery backup, and we're also including an allocation for software. Continuing on with police, we also allocated 150,000 for equipment for officers, that's safety equipment, as well as 21,000 for a safety vest, of which the other half will be paid through a grant. And then some other allocations for furniture and fixtures, office machines. Then we get down to the last 2 items for police. There's an allocation of 110,000 for 2 K-9 police vehicles, and then 80,000 for a needs assessment study for the new building, a new police building.
I guess that's kind of a preview of coming attractions. We're going to be adding K-9 units for
Yes.
PD. And that
Yes,
would be,
That item is coming, will be a separate process, but we want a budget for the vehicles, and that'll be, actually, Chief Dueño will be bringing that forward of how that's all going to work and how they're going to utilize the K-9s and the efforts. And also, there's assignments, training, and also policy issues. So that'll be, before we start buying the equipment, we'll have that settled.
Madam Mayor, if I may, refresh my memory, Mr. Duran. Did we not get some kind of a report that laid out various particular, I want to call it strategies for this unit? And I remember commenting on this K-9 unit.
Yes, you did, but we want to make sure we have all our policies in place before we start bringing the K-9s and the units online. So that you'll get more information about this as it progresses. For example, there are questions about injuries and such. All that we still need to have in place before we actually activate this. But we need a budget for the vehicle at this point. Vehicles.
well, okay, so in addition to the vehicles, have we budgeted for the purchase of the dogs?
I did question that, and not at this point in time. I believe we can use asset forfeiture funds for that, but not at this point. I guess we're going to wait until
Yes.
we present the agenda with this program for approval.
Because there are a number of things that go with it. For example, there's maintenance of the animals, and the extra training for those officers assigned to the animals, and that'll come as a full report to you of how it's going to work report.
One suggestion, and maybe since Chief is, or Mr. Medano, our future Chief is here, one of the things that I'm aware of in some other cities up in Coachella Valley is recently City of Indio has funded 2 K-9 units in a private-public partnership with many of the service clubs and organizations within the city. So that might be something, if we get to a point where we need to look at some additional financing for that or funding, we might want to look at that.
Okay.
And what's, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, what's the needs assessment study?
Basically, we go and determine, okay, for the police department building, how much square footage do we need, or what type of facilities we need within that building, based on what we have or don't have at this point in time.
What it brings in is typically it's an architect who evaluates what would be in that building, the people, the types of operations, and then applies square footage. That way we can arrive at an estimated cost of a building. you'll see later that library has summer activity.
Okay. All right.
Where was I? Yes, okay. So then we move on to animal control, and animal control, there's an allocation of 32,400 for an animal control vehicle to replace a 1996 vehicle with 191,000 miles. So very well deserved and needed. For fire, as mentioned before, we are allocating 380,000 for the, which is the last payment on the fire engine. And we also allocated various amounts for field and safety equipment, such as 150,000 for 34 self-contained breathing apparatus air packs, 4,000 for gas monitors calibration equipment for hazmat. Continuing with fire, 17,000 for an extrication power unit, Jaws of Life, 19,000 for a heart start monitor, 8,000 for a rope rescue equipment, and 6,000 for radios and batteries. For street maintenance, we have allocated just 5,000 for various pieces of equipment. This is ongoing. They may need items during the year. And then Crookshank, we have allocated $4 million, as mentioned before, for the cleanup of the landfill. For recreation, we're allocating $1.9 million for the design and initial construction for the aquatic center. That's from the '07 bonds. We're also allocating $300,000 for the, and this is for general fund activities, but it's coming from HUD entitlement, for the snack bar and restroom at Swarthout Park. Allocating also under parks, 89,000 for parking lot slurry seal at Swarthout, 33,000 for Gomez Park alley fence replacement, a top dresser, 16,000, 9,000 for lighting poles and parking blocks at the parking lot at Sunflower Park, soccer parking lot. Moving on, for the community center, we allocated 4,000 to repave the sidewalk. The budget also includes 25,000 for bleachers for the sports court. For the library, 7 computers, 10,500. 80,000 again for the feasibility study for the library building. For administration, just various software, annual license fee, 24,000. And then for various city buildings, 15,000 for defibrillators at various city buildings. With regards to personnel requests, we received various requests totaling 380,000 for the general fund. Those include for police and communications. I put them on one slide, and basically the request was to delete the police administration manager position, which is vacant, and the right column is either the savings or the cost for new positions. The request was also to delete a lead dispatch position, replace those two with a record supervisor and a dispatch supervisor. Also, a reclass or a deletion of a safety dispatcher 1 and an addition of a safety dispatcher 2. Overall, with a change in cost of 25,000 for all those changes.
Ms. Salcido, these are all in costs. This is salary, benefits, everything. Yeah.
Yes. We also received several requests for support staff. In this slide, we have from recreations, community center, and sports court. We received requests for office clerk, secretarial assistants, coordinators, and office clerks. These two half-time. Those are the costs on the right-hand side. We received for the adult center a request for a coordinator, 59,000. For the library, We received a request for a halftime assistant at 31,000. Then finally, for facility maintenance and engineering, we received a request for a secretarial assistant, halftime, facility maintenance, halftime engineering. And then for facility maintenance, we also received a request for an additional, building maintenance mechanic, and these are the costs, 34,000, 66, 34,000. So
Okay,
that's
so-
a, yes.
Okay, so those were the personnel requests.
Request, right.
And which ones then are all of these gonna be funded then?
No, the general fund, as mentioned before, is limited resources. We can't fund all of them. There's no capacity in the general fund. However, you have one building that is coming, a new division that's coming online, opening next year, and that's the sports complex. So if anything, we are trying to include a staff for that facility, and that would be the coordinator for the
Okay,
facility.
so
But again,
with the exception of the police department staffing changes,
I'm sorry,
because
yes. and
those
yes.
are all in, right?
Yes.
Then all of the other staffing requests, with the exception of perhaps what's necessary for the sports pavilion, none of these positions are included in the 14-15 budget.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we get to building challenges, budget challenges in the general fund. I did go over some of these challenges when I did the mid-year budget presentation, and they're pretty much the same thing, but I'll recap. As to challenges, both in the compiling next year's budget as well as future budgets, we face the following. We have the need for future capital projects. Each one with its own set of issues. We have the need for the aquatic center, and those are, the amounts below each one of these is the estimated cost. We have a need for a police building, a library building, and then, of course, continuing with the Crookshank landfill cleanup project. With regards to the challenge with the aquatic center, as you know, this is a project that's estimated to cost $14.3 million. We have available 11.4 out of 2 bond issuances, the 2011 RDA bonds and the 2007 RDA bonds. However, at risk is the big amount, the $9.5 million. As you know, no final decision has been made by the Department of Finance on the use of those funds. If the Department of Finance rejects those bonds, then there will be no tax increment revenue to pay for the debt service of those bonds. And the amount that we pay on those bonds is $1.3 million per year through, and it will be through 2025. In addition, another challenge with this facility is the estimated cost to run the facility for operations, estimated at $900,000. Combined, that's a challenge for the general fund of $2.2 million.
Can I just ask one quick, the police department, the 12.6 million, I know we did a couple tours, we went to La Mesa and El Cajon, but where did that 12.6 million come from? Where'd that figure come from?
We have both, I believe, our future chief and our director?
Chief,
Yeah,
yes.
our DA director, sit down and reviewed what the approximate cost is for similar facilities, the average cost is for similar facilities in other cities, and we basically estimated what our square footage requirement is, and it's a rough estimate, but, which will be modified once we get that study
The
completed.
needs
Right.
assessment.
Right.
That'll tighten that up.
Okay.
Oh, and if I will, the needs assessment also allows, when you're ready, or say we now have the funding, is that goes into the package to the designer, and they take that information and build a design with that information rather than starting from scratch. You can save quite a bit of money and time in design and construction.
mention again, police building, library building, estimated cost. We have some of the funds available, or some funds available for the police building out of impact fees, asset forfeiture, so on. However, for the library, we don't have any funds designated for that building yet. Possible funding sources, other possible funding sources is the $2.5 million that I mentioned in the, when we were going over the fund balance and the reserves and designations. And as well as $6 million from another bonds that we issued in 2011 through the RDA. However, those bonds have been rejected by the Department of Finance, and there is still the risk that we might not be able to use those funds. So therefore, the challenge with these projects. Another challenge another item that continues to be a challenge when preparing our budgets is CalPERS. As you know, CalPERS made various actuarial changes, and as a result of that, they provided to us what the projected rates are for both safety and miscellaneous for the next 5 years. That came on their valuation report dated October of 2013. According to that report, they're telling us that the safety rate will increase from 53% to 68%. The miscellaneous rate will increase from 9.2 to 17%. Based on my estimates, the projected increase, based on those rates provided by CalPERS, the cost over the next 5 years will increase from 2.7 to 3.1 million, and will be approximately 28% of the general fund budget. A very significant challenge for the city. Another challenge is that there's various miscellaneous requests that are not in the budget. The total amount requested from all the departments for both capital, operations was 38 million. We did very well, and we have been able to accommodate 32 million of that for both capitals and operations out of the general fund and other funds that fund general fund operations. However, the challenge is that we cannot meet everybody's expectations and requests, and what went unfunded, what is going unfunded based on this budget that's being presented to you is 6.3 million. And this is a breakdown of how much was for capital, operations, and then the staffing. However, this budget includes a significant amount of programs, capital, and those are the following. Some of the items included in this budget, for example, under the city clerk's division, we have some services and programs. We have the IQMA government meeting management software, which is being included in next year's budget. We have also included the co-file, an allocation for the co-file preservation of city records, which is set to preserve records going back to 1901. Is that what you said? 1901. We also have included, as mentioned before, an allocation for OPEB. The CalPERS increase in cost for just this year, 400,000, or next year, 400,000. And then, as mentioned before, a payment of $1.2 million for our liability, the city's liability insurance.
Letty,
Yes.
the reason for the projected CalPERS increases, is that because their investments portfolios are not returning as they expected?
Not at this point. At this point, what it was various actuarial changes, their mortality rates, their
Well, it was all, for example, the turnover rate, mortality rate, and discount rate, which they had delayed implementing 4 years ago, 5 years ago, is catching up, and they're having to increase more and more to catch up for the years when the state delayed it. And by the way, it affected all of us. So while we had a little bit of relief, now it's time to start catching up, and that's what's causing us to jump up. It is nothing new. It was just the delayed implementation from 5 years ago.
The information regarding the actuarial changes that were made is actually included in the report, so what I can do is I can forward a copy of that report. It's just the first few pages, but it
Yes.
gives you the.
Yeah, the executive summary.
Exactly.
But it is the statewide actuarial that was, you recall, there was, with the discount rate, also the turnover rate just came out, the new which was improved. Again, the state is the largest payer into this, and they were controlling a great deal of this that allowed them a little more slack. But now I think they're prepared to start taking on more of this. It's now impacting the rest of us because they've allowed that to go forward. If it's my response was a little bit vague, it's because what they've done is a little bit vague.
Yeah.
But I think we're starting to actually get into real current day numbers.
Okay, for, the capital included in this budget is $8 million for general fund operations. It includes, as mentioned before, the allocation for the aquatic center. It includes the allocation for the feasibility study for the police and library building, as well as the allocation for Crookshank. For fire, it includes the final payment for the fire engine, the allocations for safety equipment, the apparatus, the air packs, Jaws of Life, Head Start, Heart Start monitor, and safety equipment. For police, it includes 6 patrol vehicles, 2 general service vehicles, K-9 vehicles, animal control vehicle, safety equipment, IT infrastructure, and furniture and fixtures, $35,000. For Parks and Recreation, it includes the snack bar and restroom at Swarthought Park, a parking lot slurry seal at Swarthought Park, fence replacement at Gomez Park, bleachers for the sports court, sunflower parking lot, lighting and parking blocks, repaving the sidewalk at the community center. It includes 7 computers for the library, IT infrastructure and computers, $253,000, the defibrillators, and then miscellaneous equipment, $87,000. That's what's included in our budget. And above all, we have a balanced budget for next year. Questions?
Leticia,
Yes.
kind of following up from the earlier question I had when IVDC was here, where would we try to find that modification to up their increase or their allocation?
Sure. We have, what I did is I allocated basically the same amounts under economic development. However, under non-departmental, we always have a contingency of anywhere from 15 to 25,000. We also have an amount under other expense. So depending on the direction that I get, we'll reallocate those funds based on your need.
Under those current numbers, if we allocated a higher value to IVDC, what would then be, who would suffer or what would suffer on that if we didn't move any more money into that fund?
At this point, the contingency is basically for anything that might come up.
Okay, so the contingency is set aside,
It's
that's
not-
about 25,000?
Yes, 15 to 25, yes.
And what have we used that in the past for?
Various issues like this, the score, anything
Joint strike
that, yes.
Well,
The
and
joint
I
strike
think that
fighter.
that's going to lead to something that I also wanted to get into, is that we have a community sponsorship policy. But I think what's interesting is that the community sponsorship policy that we have talks about us in funding programs as opposed to organizations. And they make the distinction, and I think that one of the things that we need to think about is, you remember that we had the city council travel expenses and the different programs that we sponsored in terms of events. So, for example, the IBEDC annual meeting, MANA, Chamber of Commerce, IVROP, ECRMC, Foundation. So I think that we need to figure out, is that the continuing direction that we want to go? Do we want to sponsor programs through our attendance. So for example, an amount specific to the Renewable Energy Conference as opposed to, because a policy makes the distinction, we don't want to be contributing simply to ongoing operational costs of an organization. So should we really be targeting having a pot of money available that would be used specifically to support programs or attendance at events or community things like that, as opposed to, okay, here we're giving you $5,000 for general operating. I think that that's something that we need to revisit and decide, are we going to have a pot of money to do that? The question came up this year in particular in connection with both the Joint Strike Fighter and then also the SCORE event. That wasn't, how much did it turn out being?
$25,000.
$25,000 that we did not otherwise budget for that sponsorship event. And so perhaps what we need to do, instead of earmarking specific amounts for specific organizations, is say we're going to have 1% or some amount of money set aside, and as events come up, this council will decide on a case-by-case basis if that's something that we're going to fund, as opposed to just giving monies for general operating costs.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
oftentimes, or at least in the past, these particular groups that would come before us would provide some kind of information as to their need and then what they would like to see allocated to them in order to fulfill that need. In the case of IVEDC, they would be saying, based upon the monies that we had provided in the past, these were the types of activities that we accomplished. These activities generated X number of dollars. Majority of that, or 50% of that, we can demonstrate actually benefited the city of El Centro. I did not hear that tonight from Mr. Kelly, and maybe tonight was not the time for him to make that type of a presentation. But I think that might be another idea or something that we might want to consider as we're preparing to look at various groups for allocation of funds.
Well, I think that we need to revisit our policy then, because in the past, we've had requests for donations from all kinds of agencies, and I think that that's going to continue, and I think that we need to be able to say, these are the types of organizations that we are going to support financially for these reasons. And then we also need to, I think, make a differentiation. Are we going to, again, fund them, give them an amount, and then have them come back later and say, well, this is what we spend it on? Or do we say, okay, for example, let's just use IVEDC. You have a renewable energy event, we're going to give you $1,500 specific to that event, and then decide how many of us are going to attend or not attend. So
Sponsorship.
exactly. So it's more driven from a sponsorship policy standpoint than an outright donation. Because where I start to really see this get a little bit kinked is with regard to, it's not our money. I mean, this is we have to be very careful with that gift of public funds argument, and I think that we're much safer sponsoring events that we can show a nexus between our sponsorship of the event and a benefit to our community than simply giving operating capital to particular companies or organizations. So,
And I would also, encourage and piggyback on what you're saying, Madam Mayor, and I mean, we can restrict these funds for specific uses. Even if we were to give to IVEDC and say, hey, we're restricting these funds, and we want these funds to use specifically for this area. I really enjoyed Mr. Kelly's presentation. I think that we need to be thinking in terms of economic development. What I like about him is when we give to them, it's something that we get 365 days a year. So as opposed to a one-time event, I am a proponent of the SCORE race. It's $25,000 for a weekend, as opposed to $3,000 to $4,000 or $5,000 for the whole year if we did help, Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. So, again, I mean, you're exactly spot on, Mayor, in terms of the how we're using these funds, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're getting the best out of it. But, you know, at the same time, I want to make sure that we are, you know, asking those folks and restricting those monies for specific areas as opposed to just using it for overhead.
Well, I do think that we need to go back and look at our policy and look at a wise investment of funds. And I appreciate the mayor's comment in that we have a responsibility to make sure that we get a return on that investment, either financially or through public benefit or quality of life. I do think that the IBEDC does provide a valuable service to not just El Centro, but Imperial Valley. I do believe that $1,000 seems to me a pretty low contribution, and that perhaps if there's a way to increase that and continue to promote Imperial Valley and El Centro and continue to receive return on that investment, I think that's something that we need to discuss. But I've been impressed with IBEDC. I think, as I mentioned when Tim spoke, we are seeing the return on the investment, and the companies moving in, companies looking into move in. They do a good job in promoting local vendors. So I think our business community has benefited by their efforts to push local vendors on these construction projects. So I think that there's value, and I like to see us improve our contribution to them as perhaps not to the point that we were before at $10,000, but at some higher level of contribution.
I would agree, and I was trying to, Letitia, maybe you can help me. I was trying to find the increase in TOT, the or the projected increase. I think it was about 100 and something thousand projected for next year.
140,000 actually.
140,000. And I think that, certainly there seems to be a direct correlation with the work that IBDC has done for this community and the increase and the impact to our hotels. And when you look at a projected increase of 140,000, and you say, well, are we going to increase it to 5,000 or to back to the $10,000 contribution? It seems like a minimal piece of that. Certainly, you can't draw a straight correlation to every single one of those rooms being IBDC. But I think that if you look at a lot of the businesses that are doing work in this valley right now with the renewables and such, I know that a lot of those workers are staying in those hotels, which is a direct return on investment for us. I just see that, in the years past, I realized, we had some budget constraints and we reduced that when we lost RDA, but it seems to me, they're headquartered in El Centro. A lot of the businesses that they attract are located in El Centro. EV5 project with the town center is in El Centro, which is not only a TOT, but you've got sales tax revenue generated from there. I think in any city within the community of Imperial Valley, El Centro seems to be the one that's benefited the most. And I just think that our contribution to their organization should be on par with that benefit.
I think that what the expectation would be that staff revisit all of our prior year contributions. I mean, because we know that what's going to happen is the floodgates will open. I mean, we will be revisited from small business. We will be revisited from the Film Commission and other groups that we've supported in the past. So I think we're going to be looking for staff's recommendation based on the comments here as to what funding levels this budget could support as currently constructed or with modifications. I think it's very important for us to have the city attorney weigh in with regard to the nexus between what we can and cannot do with regard to a gift of public funds, to make sure that we clearly articulate what the policy is going to be so that we can consistently apply that as more and more organizations come to us for funding requests.
That's fair.
Madam Mayor, I think that as we're looking at this, we should also include the Chamber, the Chamber of Commerce. It wasn't so long ago that we were making substantial contributions to the Chamber. So,
Well, in the fireworks, remember
and yes, and the
display
fireworks display. the nexus would be if, in my mind, if we can, or if they, whoever they are, can demonstrate in some way through their reports to us that El Centro has been a beneficiary. Now, TOT, as you remember, just, I think it was last meeting that we had quite a discussion on the TOT, and there was this interest in saying that the TOT should somehow be allocated to the Visitors Bureau, which in this case would be the Chamber. So I think we need to be very careful how we're going to allocate those TOT funds, because I think it also could go for parks.
Well,
So those,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and so part of this process is going to involve, I think, a review of our community sponsored policy. And so I'm wondering, Mr. Duran, if that's something that would be done by your staff, would be done with input from council, or how would we move forward? This is policy statement number 601.
Yeah, I think it's one where we need to have some input from the council on what it is you're looking for. We'll watch this video separately and just try to make sure we captured everything else. As indicated, we have a balanced budget, so what we're talking about doing is we're going to be adding in something. We're going to be moving parts around. So this is not a rushed project. You have, going into the fiscal year, the ability to work on this and say, well, now we know what we want to do. We're going to allocate from one line item to another the amount of money that you want to do in a project. You have the time to look at it. So this is not something that you need to rush into, but clearly you want to get done, and then you'll have it set hopefully for future years. We'll take a look at the policy on that, but it's also trying to get some direction from council what you're looking for, because otherwise we're just guessing.
I think that one of the things we want you to do is to go back and say within the last 3-year time horizon, 3 to 5 year time horizon, take a look at the community events that, or community organizations that have requested funding that we have moved forward with funding, that are outside of the CDBG dollars. So our support of IVEDC, the Film Commission, small business, the fireworks, Chamber of Commerce, those organizations, all of those one-offs. And if we could take a look at that and maybe give you more direction at the next council meeting, if you're able to isolate those expenditures.
Madam Mayor, one point of distinction I think that we should make is, I think there's clearly got to be a difference between sponsorship and membership. And I think when you're talking about like IVDC, I think you look at that as almost a membership, just much like we look at League of Cities, or we look at SCAG, or whatever those associations that we participate from a financial aspect, because I don't think we're sponsoring an IVEDC. I think we're contributing as a member. In fact, I think they actually classify it as membership to the organization. Different than if we were to sponsor a fireworks show, or if we were to sponsor a nonprofit dinner or something. I think there's got to be a distinction there, because I think one is membership and one is sponsorship, and I think they're totally different.
But at the end of the day, what I think is important is how much money is going to the organization.
And the process.
And the process.
Or the policy.
Okay. Is that sufficient direction, Mr. Duran?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Any other questions or comments with regard to the budget workshop?
Well, I just want to give comments to Ms. Salcedo. I really appreciate all your hard work, not only you, but your staff, these reports, and I just have a newfound respect for how hard you work. God bless you. To you and your staff.
Thank you, we appreciate it. No other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len.
Mr. Duran, how
Yes.
much time do we have allocated for the technology report updates? About 20 minutes?
Actually, because we were doing this, we realized it's going to go a little farther. I would like to ask that this be delayed until the second meeting in May.
Okay, all of it?
Yes.
Okay? Second meeting in May.
That'll allow you to have more leisurely review of it.
Bless you.
Bless
Ms. Salcido, at the next council meeting, will we have a budget workshop on some of the other funds?
Yes, it'll be
Okay.
the enterprise fund, special revenue, capital projects. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a receive and file item number 17. Those are the Community Enhancement Task Force minutes. There are no scheduled business for either successor agency to the redevelopment agency or housing agency. Additional public comments? Seeing none, we'll return to council for task member reports and council reports. Start with Mr. Jackson.
I don't believe I have any reports. Thank you.
Okay.
Just to report on a couple of activities that I attended since the last council meeting. I attended the pinning and promotional ceremony for a couple of our firefighters. That's always, you know, a highlight and exciting times to be able to promote our own staff. So that was very well done, and I enjoyed that a lot. With the mayor, I attended the ribbon cutting for the courtroom. Excellent food.
Oh, my
It
goodness,
was
yes.
very nicely remodeled, and very nice event as well.
Yes.
This Thursday at 5:30, we're having the community meeting with the at our community center to try to address the concerns from some of our residents, particularly in the east side of town, and address issues of blight and crime and so on. And it'll be attended by our economic development department, planning, building, and our police department will be there and try to come up with some answers for the residents of our community. So I look forward to that as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just real quick, I know I don't mean to take too much time, but I do want to remind everybody that this week is National Library Week. So it's dedicated to our libraries. So this week is National Library Week. Also, they're going to be having an Easter egg hunt at our library as well. That's on Wednesday, I believe, during the story time. And if you guys haven't had a chance to go visit them during story time, it's every Wednesday at 10 a.m. There's about 20 to 25 kids that attend story time. It's really neat. I'm seeing a lot of the daycares take children now to the story time. But this Wednesday, 10 a.m. Story time, and then they're also going to have Easter egg hunt. And just I wanted to give you an update real quick on the zip books. And the zip books is like I shared last time. There's our local library applied for a grant that allows for $7,000 in new books. So as of the last 2 weeks, we've ordered 20 new books, and those books go into inventory. So this is an excellent opportunity to build our library inventory. So please go down there. If we don't have the book, have them order it. They will send it to your home. Amazon will send it to your home 2 days. It will be delivered in 2 days, and I want to encourage that we use that resource. So that's kind of what I have. Also was able to attend the pinning ceremony. It was awesome. Councilmember Sanders was there as well, and always glad to be a part of that. And I want to thank those folks and congratulate those promotions as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 4 areas I'd like to bring you up to date on. One was the Centinela State Prison meeting. Of course, we've talked about it several times over as it relates to the number of inmates they have, the programs they have going on, and they currently have between 29,000 and 2,900 and 3,200 inmates, which is just about the amount that they can handle. Their staffing levels currently meet that supply. Otherwise, we also want to talk about their children's fair that's upcoming. It'll be their 35th year. It'll be Saturday, the 26th, Buckland Park. I'm surprised I haven't seen anybody in our audience talking about the children's fair, but it will be going on. Also, on your behalf, Madam Mayor, I did attend the 100th anniversary for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It was very interesting, and I found out that many of the people that we all know are members of that particular church. One of the interesting things about it is I found out that I also knew people that were here 75 years ago, believe it or not, and there were a few people in the audience that were grandchildren of some of those old matriarchs and patriarchs. So I brought you a program in case you would like to peruse through it. I also brought you a program from the Centinela State Prison as they commemorated their victims, Crime Victims' Rights Week. And then the most enjoyable thing was out at the country club where we had a chance to illuminate the work that's being done by the Community Development Department, and Norma Villacanyon and her staff won this wonderful award. So I have a nice bag. I know that you love bags, so here's your bag. It's called Green It Forward. And I think that the staff deserve a round of applause for their effort. A round of applause. So with that in mind, I want to remind everyone that on May the 1st, I know that you and Mr. Silva will be in, at the SCAG meeting, but on May 1st, Salvation Army will be having its prayer breakfast in conjunction with the National Day of Prayer. So hope those that are not going to SCAG will join us at the Salvation Army National Day of Prayer, which will be held at Desert Trails RV Park. Thank you.
Okay,
And I'll
we're
be there.
going to come back this way because we have a couple more comments.
Just real quick, I just wanted to also wish Councilmember Jackson on a happy birthday last Saturday, so happy birthday, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Getting older.
Mr. Silva?
I did, it's not part of my council report because it's not a council item, so maybe it's a dean's report from IBC. But IBC is a little late in getting the official invitations out to the community on the ribbon cutting for our new career technical building. So I would like to ask the mayor and council members and anyone in the audience that would like to attend the ribbon cutting that's scheduled for May 1st at 10 in the morning in our new facility. I think that people that go will be very impressed. It's a huge investment in our community, $24 million investment in career technical education. And hope to see you there. So if you go, you get to see my new office. And I hope to see you there. I think you'll be impressed with what IBC has done for our community.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I failed to mention also on May 1st, we'll be having I don't know whether to call it a farewell party or a congratulations party or a party for outstanding achievements and work within the police department for Chief McGinley. It's on May 1st. I will be going on your behalf.
Thank you. Very quickly, because we're getting late here, I did attend League of California Cities. I'm a member of the Public Safety Committee. We did receive a full briefing on the governor's budget, transportation, public works, environmental quality, land use, public safety, and then employee relations, all kinds of legislation that's pending. We spent a great deal of time talking about the medical marijuana initiative and where that's going, and I think that may very well have an impact on the direction that this council takes with regard to our own ordinance. So that was April 4th, very interesting. Attended, as Mr. Silva stated, the courtroom ribbon cutting. I'm going to give the menu to our city clerk so we can move that into the rotation for our lunches. As earlier announced, the coloring contest on behalf of the Fair Housing was really a lot of fun. Participated with many members of the city staff with the Legislative Action Day preview, the briefing on the priority bills. I have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. It's also available online. They've made it infinitely easy for us to go in and either indicate our support or opposition to bills. It can all be done electronically online. We're hoping that Grace was fully briefed on that.
She was very excited about it.
Perfect, excellent. City visitation program, we visited Best Buy and Bevmo on Friday. And we were told Best Buy was one of the highest grossing stores in that Best Buy chain anywhere. I mean, they just do a phenomenal business here in the Imperial Valley, and Bevmo is very excited, as we're very excited to have them in our community. I then, on Sunday, had the opportunity to attend the State Cup Finals for soccer and watched our Dynamo Gecko girls under 14 be successful in their state championship in San Bernardino, and was able to say a few words on behalf of the city of El Centro and hang their medals around their necks. I will invite them to a council meeting for all of us to congratulate them. Next week, I am attending, I'm leaving Tuesday for a NAFTA conference in Chicago, and I'll be there as a representative of SCAG from Tuesday through Friday. Want to remind everyone of the services for Pat Urena's mom, which will be held Wednesday, April 23rd in Calexico at Our Lady of Guadalupe. The wake is at 8 a.m. So that concludes my report. I think we are adjourned. Thank you. Okay. Busy, busy, busy. What's going on?